You're walking down the grocery aisle, the fluorescent lights flickering ominously overhead. Each product on the shelf glimmers enticingly, yet you can't shake the chilling feeling that one of them might hold a deadly secret. In the shadows of corporate Japan lurks a group known as the Monster with 21 Faces, a phantom that poisoned the very items you trust. Their legacy is a sinister reminder that terror can emerge from the most unexpected places, leaving you to question, is it safe to consume? Chapter 1: Origins of Terror. As the sun set over Tokyo in the 1980s, casting long shadows on the bustling streets, a new era of corporate dominance emerged in Japan. The nation was experiencing unprecedented economic growth, transforming from the ashes of World War II into a global powerhouse. Corporate culture flourished, marked by towering skyscrapers and the relentless pursuit of success. Yet, beneath this veneer of prosperity, a darker undercurrent simmered, a pervasive discontent among the populace. The relentless grind of corporate life, the pressure to conform, and the rising tide of scandals began to erode the public's trust, breeding a climate ripe for chaos. The seeds of corporate terrorism were sown during this tumultuous time, as scandals rocked the foundations of some of Japan's most revered companies. In 1985, the nation was shaken by the revelation of the Yamaichi securities scandal, a devastating blow to the public's faith in financial institutions. The exposure of extensive accounting fraud not only cost thousands of jobs, but also shattered the illusion of integrity within the corporate elite. The fallout was swift and merciless. With each exposed scandal, public confidence waned, giving rise to an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. Amidst this chaos, whispers of a new breed of criminal emerged, one that would exploit the vulnerabilities of the corporate world. The first signs of the impending storm appeared in the form of threats, poisonings, and sinister communications that would soon send ripples of terror through the heart of Japan's corporate landscape. The stage was set for a new kind of nightmare, one that would haunt the nation for years to come. In March 1984, the people of Japan awoke to the horrifying news of a tainted product scandal that would change everything. The Glico Company, a beloved snack manufacturer known for its Pocky and other treats, became the target of an unknown assailant who would later be dubbed the Monster with 21 Faces. The company's flagship chocolate snack was poisoned, leading to a wave of panic that swept across the nation. With the specter of danger lurking in every corner, consumers were gripped by fear. How could one trust the very products that were meant to bring joy? The poisonings were only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, the anonymous perpetrators sent a series of letters to the media and police, taunting them with details of their crimes and cryptic messages that fueled public fascination and terror. The letters were not merely threats. They were a chilling commentary on the vulnerabilities of the corporate world, a world that had once seemed invincible. The group's brazen audacity to challenge the status quo sent shockwaves through society. As panic grew, the Glico crisis triggered a wave of corporate paranoia. The fear of being targeted by the monster was palpable, leading to increased security measures and a pervasive sense of dread within boardrooms across the country. The faceless group behind the attacks revealed their motivations, which transcended simple extortion. They sought to expose the rot festering within Japan's corporate culture. They were a reflection of the disillusioned citizens who had grown tired of the veneer of respectability that masked rampant greed and corruption. By the mid-1980s, the name Monster with 21 Faces became synonymous with fear. This moniker, derived from the character of the same name in a popular Japanese snack commercial, was a chilling reminder of the innocence lost. The original character was a friendly face that represented the joy of eating snacks, but now it took on a sinister connotation, a symbol of the insidious threat that lurked within the nation's most trusted brands. The group's decision to adopt this name was not merely for shock value. It was a calculated move to mock the very foundations of corporate Japan. The duality of this identity, the sweet and the sinister, encapsulated the psychological warfare they waged. In September 1985, the group escalated their campaign of terror, launching an attack on Shoken, another well-known food company. They poisoned various products, further deepening the chasm of fear and distrust that had already begun to fracture the relationship between consumers and corporations. The letters that accompanied these attacks painted a chilling portrait of the group's motivations. They sought to expose the greed and dishonesty that pervaded the corporate landscape. With each letter, they detailed their intentions and mocked the ineptitude of law enforcement, reveling in the chaos they created. Their taunts echoed through the media, amplifying the fear they instilled in the public. As the Monsters campaign continued, the investigation into their crimes grew increasingly complex. Law enforcement agencies struggled to keep up with the mounting pressure. Each attack revealed the extent of the group's planning, their ability to remain anonymous, and their mastery of manipulation. Public fascination turned to obsession, as the media painted a vivid picture of a faceless enemy lurking within the shadows of the corporate world. The monster with 21 faces was not merely a group of criminals. They represented the growing discontent within society, a collective voice that demanded accountability from the very institutions that had failed them. They were the manifestation of a fear that had taken root in the hearts of the Japanese people, a fear that grew with each corporate scandal and betrayal. As the monster's threats and poisonings continued, they laid bare the cracks in a society that had built its identity on trust and respectability. In this eerie dance of cat and mouse, the monster thrived, eluding capture while simultaneously exposing the rot within Japan's corporate culture. Their actions forced a reckoning, challenging corporations to confront their own failings. The group's chilling legacy would leave an indelible mark on Japanese society, forcing individuals and institutions to grapple with their vulnerabilities in the face of an unseen terror. As the 1990s approached, the specter of the monster loomed larger, a constant reminder that the monster was not merely a criminal entity, but a harbinger of the darkness lurking within the very fabric of corporate Japan. The shadows cast by the monster with 21 faces would continue to haunt the nation for years to come, a testament to the terrifying reality of corporate terrorism that had taken root in a society once thought invulnerable. With each passing day, the threat felt more palpable, leaving the people of Japan to wonder, who were the faces behind the mask, and what dark revelations would emerge from the depths of their corporate nightmare. Chapter 2: The First Attack. In the spring of 1984, Japan stood at the precipice of a nightmare. The cherry blossoms that painted the landscape with fleeting beauty contrasted starkly with the malevolent storm brewing in the shadows of its corporate landscape. It was during this season of renewal that the monster with 21 faces struck for the first time, targeting one of the nation's most beloved snack manufacturers, Glico. The attack began quietly, with a series of ominous, nearly cryptic letters sent to Glico. The letters were penned in a disjointed, yet chillingly confident tone, hinting at what was to come. The monster's audacity was evident as they issued threats, claiming they had poisoned a batch of Glico products and intended to wreak havoc unless their demands were met. The threat was not merely an act of extortion. It was an unveiling of vulnerabilities that would send shockwaves across the nation. On May 26, 1984, the first poison product, a Glico snack, was reported to be contaminated with a toxic substance. A mother purchasing treats for her children unknowingly placed a deadly product in her shopping basket, a seemingly innocuous choice that could have led to unthinkable tragedy. Panic rippled through the nation like wildfire as news of the poisoning broke. Consumers were suddenly caught in a frenzy of fear, questioning the very safety of the products they had once trusted without a second thought. The ensuing media frenzy was nothing short of chaotic. Newspapers blared headlines that screamed of corporate terror, while television stations cut into regular programming with urgent updates. Families across Japan were gripped by anxiety, and the aisles of grocery stores, once filled with laughter and chatter, became scenes of hushed whispers and nervous glances. How could this happen in a society that prided itself on quality and safety? The psychological impact of the attack was profound, leading many to scrutinize every item they brought into their homes. In response to the crisis, the police mobilized an extensive investigation that would become one of the largest manhunts in Japanese history. The National Police Agency, set up a special task force to tackle the unprecedented threat posed by the monster. Law enforcement began by tracing the origins of the tainted products, analyzing every conceivable angle in a desperate bid to prevent further incidents. They combed through records, looking for any leads, any connections to corporate rivals, or disgruntled employees who may have harbored ill will toward the company. Every stone was overturned in the hope of uncovering the shadowy figures behind the monster. Despite their best efforts, the investigation quickly revealed itself to be an uphill battle. The monster with 21 faces seemed to anticipate every move, evading capture while reveling in the chaos they had unleashed. As if to add insult to injury, they sent more letters to the media, taunting both the police and the public. The letters were filled with sarcasm, mocking the incompetence of the authorities and the naivety of the citizens. Each word was calculated, designed to deepen the atmosphere of fear and distrust that hung heavy in the air. It was a twisted game for them, one that they seemed to relish. As the investigation unfolded, Glico found itself at the center of a media storm, forced to navigate the treacherous waters of public relations while their reputation hung in the balance. The company's executives held press conferences, attempting to reassure consumers that they were taking every precaution to ensure product safety. However, the words fell flat as the reality of the situation settled in. The company's image, once synonymous with quality and trust, was shattered. The public's perception of Glico morphed from a beloved brand to one shrouded in suspicion and fear. As the attack progressed, the implications of the monster's actions extended far beyond Glico. This was not merely a corporate scandal. It was a direct assault on the very foundation of consumer trust that underpinned Japan's economy. The attack triggered a nationwide panic that rippled through other industries, prompting companies to bolster their security measures and review their safety protocols. Grocery stores began removing products from shelves, and consumers became hyper-aware of the items they purchased. The once sacrosanct belief that a brand was a guarantee of safety was eroded overnight. The fallout from the Glico poisoning had a profound and lasting impact on corporate Japan. Companies were forced to reevaluate their vulnerability to such acts of terrorism. Security measures that had previously seemed unnecessary became imperative. As panic gripped the nation, the demand for transparency and accountability surged. Consumers wanted assurance that the products they consumed were safe, and corporations were compelled to adapt or risk facing the wrath of a fearful populace. The Glico incident served as a grim reminder that the seemingly impenetrable fortress of corporate culture was, in fact, vulnerable to the machinations of those who lurked in the shadows. The attack was a watershed moment, igniting a societal reckoning that forced Japan to confront its vulnerabilities in an era characterized by blind trust in its corporate giants. Yet, the monster with 21 faces was far from finished. With the first attack under their belt, they had successfully introduced a new brand of fear into the Japanese psyche, one that would not be easily forgotten. The chilling reality was that this was only the beginning of their reign of terror. The nation now faced an enemy whose identity remained concealed, lurking behind the veil of anonymity while reveling in the chaos they had created. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the question lingered: who was behind this sinister group? What drove them to inflict such terror upon their own society? The monster had awakened something dark within the heart of Japan, and the people would soon realize that this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt them for years to come. In the wake of the first attack, Japan found itself grappling not only with a chilling reality, but also with a fundamental shift in the way it viewed corporate safety and trust. The specter of the monster loomed large, and as the public continued to navigate their fear, one thing was clear: the corporate world had become a battlefield, and the stakes had never been higher. Chapter 3: The Chuoshoken Incident. The sun dipped low on the horizon in 1985, casting long shadows over Japan's bustling urban landscape. Yet darkness was not just an illusion. It was manifesting in the most insidious of ways. Following the shocking Glico poisoning, the monster with 21 faces proved that their reign of terror was far from over. Their next target, Chuoshoken, a respected food manufacturer, would suffer the same fate, amplifying the specter of fear that loomed over the nation. In September 1985, as families settled into their evening routines, unaware of the impending doom, the monster struck again. A chilling letter was sent to a local newspaper, revealing that Chwashokin products had been poisoned. The letter was a harbinger of dread, signed in the unmistakable style of the monster, who had quickly established a signature of terror that sent shivers down the spines of the public and law enforcement alike. The group had evolved from threatening a single company to threatening the safety of an entire industry, exposing the vulnerability of everyday products that had been trusted for years. The news broke like a thunderclap, plunging the nation into chaos. As details emerged, it became evident that the monster had poisoned several products, specifically targeting the beloved Chwashokin snacks. Reports flooded in about children falling ill after consuming these tainted treats, and the ripple effect was immediate. Parents frantically searched their cupboards, throwing out any products associated with the company in a blind panic. Store shelves emptied almost overnight, as the nation turned from joyful consumption to fearful avoidance. The media, ever hungry for sensational stories, seized upon the incident with a fervor that amplified the terror. Headlines screamed from every corner, capturing the public's attention and stoking the flames of fear. "Children poisoned by snacks," read one headline, while another proclaimed, "Who is the monster with 21 faces?" As fear gripped the nation, journalists pored over every detail of the case, speculating about the group's motives and identity. The monster's clever manipulation of the media fueled their notoriety, allowing them to cultivate a sense of dread that loomed larger than life. They became not just criminals, but celebrities of a sort, fascinating and terrifying figures in a twisted narrative that captivated the public. As the investigation unfolded, law enforcement faced monumental challenges. The National Police Agency had established a dedicated task force to tackle this unprecedented crisis, yet they found themselves grappling with an enemy that was not only elusive but strategically astute. The monster's cunning was on full display, as they managed to cover their tracks with chilling precision. Each taunt sent to the media served not only to mock the investigators, but to distract from the trail of evidence they desperately sought. Investigators had scant leads to follow. The product distribution chains were extensive, making it nearly impossible to pinpoint how and where the poison had been introduced. With no eyewitnesses and little forensic evidence, the police were left floundering in a sea of uncertainty. The letters received by the media were cryptic, revealing nothing more than the group's intention to instill fear and uncertainty in the public psyche. The anonymity that the monster had cultivated allowed them to operate with impunity, rendering law enforcement helpless in their pursuit. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation grew more desperate. Police began canvassing neighborhoods, interviewing anyone who might have seen something suspicious. Yet, as the pressure mounted, the monster merely adapted, shifting tactics as they observed the investigators' actions from the shadows. Each letter they sent deepened the psychological torment, and with every taunt, they sowed more seeds of doubt and fear. The psychological warfare was particularly harrowing. With their letters, the monster not only claimed responsibility for the poisonings, but also articulated a manifesto of sorts, detailing their disdain for the corporate world and its failures. They painted themselves as vigilantes of justice, standing against the greed and corruption that had permeated Japanese society. This narrative struck a chord with many citizens, as the public was already disillusioned from the fallout of previous corporate scandals. While the authorities scrambled for answers, the monster reveled in the chaos they had unleashed. In a particularly sinister twist, they announced their intention to target additional companies if their demands were not met. This escalation was nothing short of a declaration of war against corporate Japan, one that would leave lasting scars on the collective consciousness of the nation. The ensuing panic had far-reaching implications, forcing companies to rethink their security protocols. Chwashokin, once a trusted brand, became a cautionary tale. Other food manufacturers rushed to improve their safety measures, as consumers demanded transparency and accountability. Product recalls became the norm, and shelves once lined with familiar goods now lay bare, emptied by fear. As the monster's campaign of terror continued, the psychological impact on the Japanese populace was profound. Trust eroded, and the mundane act of grocery shopping transformed into an exercise in paranoia. Families were left to wonder whether their next meal could be their last, and the specter of the monster loomed ever larger in their minds. Months passed, and despite the authorities' best efforts, the monster remained elusive. The investigation became a national obsession, a dark narrative that gripped the nation and turned the focus inward, prompting citizens to question not only the safety of their food, but also the integrity of the very systems designed to protect them. In a society that had long prided itself on its commitment to quality and safety, the reality of poisonings shattered the illusion. The scars of the Chwashokahin incident lingered, serving as a chilling reminder of the fragility of trust and the darkness that could emerge from within. The investigation had illuminated the vulnerabilities of Japan's corporate landscape, and yet it also underscored a more disturbing reality. The monster was not merely a criminal group. They were a manifestation of the fear, anger, and disillusionment that simmered beneath the surface of a rapidly changing society. With each passing day, they grew bolder, their tactics more ruthless. As the investigation continued without resolution, a sense of hopelessness settled over the nation. What began as a singular incident had evolved into a sprawling nightmare, one that offered no answers and no respite. The monster with 21 faces had proven that they could strike at will, and with each tainted product, they left a chilling reminder that in a world filled with uncertainty, the true monster might just be lurking within. In the shadows, the group watched as fear spread like a disease, knowing that they had succeeded in their mission to terrify the nation. The Chwashokahin incident was not merely a crime. It was a declaration that a new era of corporate terrorism had arrived, one that would change the face of Japan forever. Chapter 4: The Letters and the Mind Games. In the wake of the harrowing Chwashokahin incident, the monster with 21 faces escalated their campaign of terror, launching a sinister psychological war against the nation. Their letters, sent to media outlets and law enforcement, were not mere communications. They were meticulously crafted instruments of manipulation designed to instill fear, showcase their cleverness, and reinforce their status as the puppet masters of a bewildered public. Each letter dripped with taunts, daring the police to catch them while simultaneously heightening the collective anxiety of a nation that was already on edge. The letters bore the chilling signature of the monster, revealing a meticulous planning that was as alarming as the poisonings themselves. In one infamous letter, the group claimed responsibility for the Chwashokahin incident, asserting that they had successfully infiltrated a beloved brand, turning a trusted household item into a weapon. Their prose was laden with a sinister playfulness, as if they were reveling in the chaos they had created. This message wasn't just about the poisonings. It was an audacious challenge to the authorities. "Do you really think you can catch us?" they seemed to ask with every twisted word. The psychological impact of these letters was profound. They tapped into deep-seated fears and anxieties, shaking the foundations of trust that the Japanese people had in their food systems. Families that once viewed the grocery store as a safe haven now entered the aisles with trepidation, uncertain if the products they purchased were laced with malice. The monster's clever manipulation of language and their ability to remain one step ahead of law enforcement transformed them from mere criminals into an almost mythical presence, figures shrouded in mystery and fear. The name Monster with 21 Faces itself was a carefully chosen moniker that spoke volumes about their intentions and the symbolism they wielded. Derived from a popular snack, the name underscored the group's connection to Japan's corporate culture, suggesting that even the most innocent of products could harbor malevolent forces. Each face represented a different aspect of their operations, multiple identities, a multitude of threats, and a veiled taunt that they were virtually untouchable. This clever branding not only intrigued the public, but also contributed to the pervasive anxiety surrounding their actions. In their letters, the monster employed a series of symbols and phrases that turned their correspondence into a cryptic language only they could decipher. This artful manipulation served to deepen the sense of dread, as citizens speculated over the meaning behind each carefully chosen word. The group showcased their intellect and sophistication, presenting themselves as a dark riddle wrapped in enigma, teasing the police and public alike. With each letter sent, they layered more psychological pressure on their targets, revealing not just their capacity for violence, but their aptitude for mind games. As media coverage of the monster intensified, public fascination grew to terrifying heights. Newspaper headlines flourished with sensational stories about the group, detailing their latest threats and taunts. Journalists scrambled to uncover the monster's identity, publishing theories and speculations that captured the imagination of a fearful public. Some even began to romanticize the group, casting them as anti-heroes fighting against the corporate establishment. This fascination came at a high cost, feeding into a cycle of terror that only served to empower the monster further. In a particularly alarming incident, one letter suggested that the monster had plans to poison not just food products but also public infrastructure, a terrifying implication that they could strike at any moment and in any place. This letter sent a shockwave of panic through the population, prompting parents to keep their children indoors and workers to question the safety of their workplaces. The fear was palpable, and the monster knew it. They thrived on the public's anxiety, understanding that each letter sent was another thread woven into the tapestry of dread that engulfed the nation. The psychological warfare waged by the monster with 21 faces illustrated a disturbing reality. They were not merely interested in causing physical harm. They sought to instill a pervasive sense of fear and paranoia that would linger long after the poisonings. They were orchestrators of a grand performance, with the nation itself as their audience. The group's capacity for manipulation turned the mundane into a stage for horror, where grocery shopping and school lunches became laden with the potential for disaster. The group's continued elusiveness played directly into the public's fear. As investigations stalled and leads grew cold, citizens found themselves locked in a mental prison, haunted by the question of who these monsters could be and when they might strike next. The monster's letters fed into a growing narrative of conspiracy, with citizens forming their own theories and speculating wildly about the identities of the perpetrators. This atmosphere of suspicion fueled paranoia, as people began to see potential threats in the most innocuous of places. Families turned on each other, questioning every strange behavior or uncharacteristic action. "What if it's them?" became a refrain, transforming neighbors into potential suspects and creating rifts in communities that had once thrived on trust and camaraderie. The monster had succeeded in creating a pervasive sense of unease, one that seeped into the very fabric of daily life. The psychological ramifications of their actions extended far beyond the immediate physical danger. They had tapped into something primal, stirring a collective fear that would resonate for years to come. As public fascination continued to escalate, the monster with 21 faces became something of a cultural phenomenon. True crime enthusiasts began to dissect the letters, theorizing about the group's motivations and potential identities. The media stoked the flames of this fascination, painting the monster as a ghostly specter lurking in the shadows, a figure both terrifying and beguiling. In their letters, the monster revealed a disturbing truth. They thrived on the chaos they sowed and the fear they generated. They understood that fear itself could be weaponized, turning the populace against one another and forcing the authorities into a corner. With each taunting missive, they established a new power dynamic, one where they held the upper hand and the citizens of Japan were left to grapple with the fallout. Ultimately, the monster with 21 faces succeeded in transforming fear into a way of life, embedding their legacy into the psyche of a nation. Each letter sent was a sinister reminder that behind the veneer of safety and security, there lurked a darkness capable of shattering trust and sowing chaos. As the monster continued to weave their web of manipulation, the people of Japan faced a grim reality. The monster was not merely a threat. They were a manifestation of the very fears that had been growing in the shadows of society. The mind games had only just begun, and the consequences would haunt the nation for generations. Chapter 5: Corporate Responses and Changes. In the sinister shadow cast by the monster with 21 faces, Japanese corporations were left reeling in the aftermath of the group's psychological and physical assaults. The terror unleashed by the poisonings forced companies like Glico and Trishokin to reassess their operations and security protocols in a desperate attempt to safeguard their brands, their employees, and their very existence. The threat was not just an assault on their products. It was an insidious attack on the foundation of trust that consumers had in the food they consumed and the corporations that produced it. Following the Glico poisonings of 1984, the company found itself at a crossroads. The poisonings, which sparked nationwide panic, made it clear that complacency was no longer an option. Glico rapidly overhauled its operational protocols, implementing stringent safety measures that had never been considered necessary before. They introduced rigorous quality control checks and began a comprehensive review of their supply chain to ensure that no external tampering could occur. The company also invested heavily in employee training programs, teaching staff how to recognize potential threats and how to react in emergencies. This commitment to security reflected a sobering reality. They were no longer just a candy manufacturer. They had become a target in a game of corporate terrorism. Trishokin, too, faced a reckoning. The poisoning incident that struck in 1985 served as a wake-up call, prompting the company to adopt unprecedented security measures. The management realized that the monster's tactics were not just about causing harm, but were deeply rooted in their ability to sow fear and uncertainty. In response, Trishokin fortified its production facilities, employing surveillance systems and enhancing physical security. Their marketing strategy took a drastic turn as well. The once open approach to consumer engagement transformed into a guarded and defensive posture, where transparency was replaced by secrecy. The realization that trust could evaporate overnight led to a retreat from public engagement that had long characterized their brand. The financial implications of these incidents were staggering. Glico and Trishokin both suffered crippling losses in revenue as consumers turned away from their products, terrified of the possibility that their next meal could be laced with poison. The once revered brands found themselves on the brink of collapse, forced to confront the harsh reality that the monster had turned their products into pariahs. Glico's stock prices plummeted, and the company faced serious questions about its viability. Faced with mounting financial pressure, they were forced to invest millions into rebuilding their tarnished image and reassuring a skeptical public. This was not merely a financial crisis. It was an existential threat, one that forced these corporations to reevaluate their very identities. Legal repercussions also loomed large in the wake of the monster's assaults. In an effort to protect their brands and restore consumer confidence, Glico and Trishokin pursued aggressive legal strategies against those they believed could be associated with the attacks. The legal landscape became fraught with tension, as the companies sought to hold accountable anyone perceived as a potential threat to their operations. This included not only criminals but also individuals who might inadvertently contribute to the narrative of fear. The legal system struggled to keep pace with the rapid evolution of corporate responses, leading to a litigious environment where every move was scrutinized and every decision had the potential to backfire. The media played a pivotal role in amplifying the horror and uncertainty that enveloped Japan during this tumultuous period. Sensational headlines dominated newspapers, framing the monster with 21 faces as a malevolent force lurking in the shadows, ready to strike without warning. The coverage often veered into the realm of the sensational, with journalists speculating on the group's motivations, identities, and future actions. The public became captivated by the story, but the media's portrayal was not without consequences. While it heightened awareness of the threats posed by corporate terrorism, it also intensified the panic and fear gripping society. This constant barrage of frightening imagery and rhetoric contributed to a climate of distrust, where the very act of purchasing food became a gamble. The implications for Japanese society extended far beyond the corporate realm. The poisonings and the subsequent media frenzy ignited a broader conversation about safety and security that resonated deeply with the public. Citizens began to question the efficacy of the government and law enforcement in ensuring their safety. How could such a group operate with impunity, terrorizing well-established companies and, by extension, the people who relied on them. This existential crisis forced the public to confront uncomfortable truths about their own vulnerability in the face of such targeted malevolence. The term corporate terrorism gained traction in public discourse, framing the monster's actions not just as criminal, but as a calculated assault on the fabric of society. In boardrooms and dining rooms alike, discussions centered on the fragility of trust in brands, in the government, and in one another. The fear that had once been relegated to the fringes of society now took center stage, as conversations about safety permeated everyday life. Grocery stores implemented heightened security measures, from bag checks to surveillance cameras, in a bid to protect their patrons and their reputations. As companies scrambled to re-establish their brands, the landscape of consumer trust shifted dramatically. Corporations that had once enjoyed unwavering loyalty found themselves in a precarious position, competing not just against one another, but against an insidious and intangible enemy. Every marketing campaign, every advertisement was viewed through the lens of suspicion. The monster had not only poisoned products, they had poisoned the very wellspring of trust that companies relied on to thrive. This atmosphere of paranoia and fear saw the emergence of new consumer behaviors. People began to scrutinize product labels more closely, seeking out information on sourcing and safety protocols. The demand for transparency surged as consumers wanted to know not just what they were eating, but also how it was produced and handled. Brands that could demonstrate a commitment to safety and quality began to gain traction, while those entangled in the legacy of the poisonings continued to suffer. The legacy of the monster with 21 faces was not one confined to the annals of crime. It transformed the very landscape of corporate Japan. Businesses learned hard lessons about vulnerability and the importance of crisis management. The shift from a focus on profit to a commitment to safety and security became paramount. The fear instilled by the monster echoed through boardrooms and grocery aisles alike, as the horror of their actions left an indelible mark on the psyche of the nation. As the dust settled, it became clear that the monster had achieved a profound victory. Their capacity to instill fear had altered the fabric of society, forcing a reckoning within corporations and compelling a society to grapple with its vulnerabilities. The monster lurking in the shadows had not just poisoned food, it had poisoned trust, leaving a lasting legacy of fear and uncertainty in its wake. Chapter 6: The Investigation's Evolution. As the monster with 21 faces continued its campaign of terror throughout Japan, law enforcement faced an uphill battle. What began as a series of poisonings spiraled into a haunting game of cat and mouse, forcing investigators to evolve their tactics in the pursuit of an elusive specter. The psychological strain of not only chasing down a faceless enemy, but also addressing the growing public fear added layers of complexity to an already daunting task. The investigation took on a life of its own, morphing over the years into a chilling reflection of society's anxieties. In the early stages, the investigative techniques employed by police were rudimentary, largely reliant on traditional methods of inquiry. Officers conducted interviews and gathered physical evidence, but they quickly discovered that these tactics were insufficient against a group that thrived on misdirection and chaos. With each poisoning incident, the monster with 21 faces demonstrated a cunning ability to evade capture, leaving behind no clear trail. As a response, law enforcement began to incorporate more sophisticated investigative strategies. The introduction of surveillance technology marked a turning point. Hidden cameras and wiretaps became vital tools in the ongoing effort to unravel the group's web of deception. By the late 1980s, police began utilizing criminal profiling techniques to try to understand the psychology of the group. This approach sought to create a profile of the monster's potential members, examining behavioral patterns and motives. Investigators pored over the letters sent to the media and police, attempting to decipher the riddles and taunts embedded in the text. This meticulous analysis revealed a disturbing truth. The monster was not only intelligent, but also disturbingly aware of the media's role in amplifying their terror. The group's ability to communicate with a calculated blend of wit and menace was a testament to their understanding of public psychology. As the investigation deepened, several prominent suspects emerged, each bringing their own dark history and motivations to the table. Some theories link the monster with organized crime, suggesting that the group could be a faction of the Yakuza or other criminal syndicates seeking to instill fear for monetary gain. The Yakuza, known for their ruthlessness and willingness to employ violence, presented a compelling theory, especially considering the societal upheaval of the time. Investigators explored connections to various criminal organizations, desperately seeking a lead that would illuminate the shadows shrouding the group's identity. However, these theories remained largely speculative, and the investigation often seemed like grasping at smoke. Each lead felt promising, only to dissolve into the ether, leaving investigators frustrated and the public terrified. The involvement of prominent suspects never panned out, resulting in a growing narrative of hopelessness. As the years passed, the public's fascination with the monster morphed into an obsession, one that only fueled the police's desperation. The fear that had gripped the nation was palpable. It seeped into the very fabric of society, casting a long shadow over daily life. Public involvement became a double-edged sword in the evolving investigation. Initially, tips poured in as citizens felt compelled to assist law enforcement in bringing the monster to justice. However, as time passed and the investigation dragged on without resolution, the narrative began to shift. The public's enthusiasm waned, replaced by a chilling realization that their safety was an illusion, easily shattered by the unseen hand of terror. The notion that the monster could be anyone in society, your neighbor, your co-worker, was a haunting thought that lingered in the back of many minds. In a desperate bid to engage the public, police enlisted the media's help, broadcasting appeals for information and asking citizens to remain vigilant. The public's involvement became critical as rumors spread like wildfire and theories began to evolve. Some citizens began to propose connections between the monster and various social movements, alleging that the attacks were a form of protest against corporate greed. These theories, while far-fetched, showcased the growing paranoia that permeated society. In a nation on edge, the truth became obscured by speculation, making it increasingly difficult to distinguish fact from fiction. As the investigation progressed into the 1990s, the nature of the monster's letters began to change. Initially filled with bravado and taunts, they evolved into cryptic messages that hinted at the group's intentions but offered little in the way of clarity. The taunting tone of the letters served as a psychological weapon, further demoralizing investigators and captivating the public's imagination. The constant barrage of mind games played by the monster fed into a growing narrative of despair. Each letter was not just a message, but a chilling reminder that the group was still at large, their presence lurking just beneath the surface of everyday life. The ongoing investigation spurred a sense of urgency among law enforcement, culminating in an unprecedented collaboration between various police departments across Japan. As fear gripped the nation, a task force was established, pooling resources and expertise in an effort to finally bring the monster to justice. Investigators from different regions began to share intelligence, hoping to uncover a pattern in the chaos that had unfolded over the years. However, this collaborative effort often devolved into bureaucratic nightmares, as agencies struggled to reconcile their differing methodologies and priorities. Despite the cooperation, the investigation remained a dark and murky labyrinth with no clear exit in sight. As years turned into decades, the relentless pursuit of the monster with 21 faces morphed into an enduring symbol of the failure to confront the very real threat of corporate terrorism. With each passing year, the specter of the monster loomed larger, not just as a criminal entity, but as a representation of the fear that had infiltrated the collective consciousness of Japanese society. The chilling reality of the monster with 21 faces served as a stark reminder of the complexities of human nature and the shadows that lurk within society. As law enforcement continued their hunt, the public grappled with a haunting truth: the monster may never be caught. The evolution of the investigation had transformed it from a quest for justice into a relentless pursuit of an intangible phantom, an enemy that thrived on fear and uncertainty. In the end, the monster with 21 faces was not just a criminal. It was an idea, a manifestation of the darkness that can lie hidden beneath the surface of normalcy. As investigators struggled against the tide of despair, the public was left with a sense of foreboding that would not soon fade. The monster had succeeded not only in terrorizing companies, but in embedding itself into the psyche of a nation, leaving an indelible mark on Japan's history, one that continues to haunt its citizens to this day. Chapter 7: Legacy of the Monster. As the decades have passed, the legacy of the monster with 21 faces looms large over Japan, a haunting specter that refuses to fade from public consciousness. The group's unsolved mysteries stand as a chilling testament to the tenacity of evil, revealing the profound and unsettling truth. Even with extensive efforts, the monster remains elusive. While countless investigations have delved into the darkest corners of corporate terror, the identity of the perpetrators remains shrouded in shadow, an enigmatic puzzle that eludes both law enforcement and the public alike. Despite the relentless pursuit of justice, the haunting question persists. Why has this group evaded capture for so long? The answer lies not only in the cunning tactics employed by the monster, but also in the complexities of the investigations that followed their attacks. The group's ability to remain one step ahead of authorities is a chilling reminder of their intelligence and planning. Letters sent to the media and police, filled with taunts and riddles, showcase their psychological warfare tactics. Each message served as a reminder of their ability to manipulate public perception and create a sense of chaos that baffled investigators. As law enforcement grapples with the enduring specter of the monster, the psychological impact on society has been profound. The reality that a group could so easily instill fear within a nation has left an indelible mark on the collective psyche of the Japanese people. The once unwavering trust in corporate safety measures and public institutions has been shattered, replaced by an insidious paranoia that lingers beneath the surface. The monster has transformed from a mere criminal entity into an embodiment of the fears that can disrupt the very fabric of society. The cultural impact of the monster's reign of terror cannot be overstated. Following the poisonings, Japanese corporate culture underwent a seismic shift. Companies like Glico and Shokin were forced to reevaluate their security protocols, implementing stringent measures that altered the landscape of corporate operations. Safety became a paramount concern. Products were scrutinized more closely than ever before, and public relations efforts were aimed at restoring consumer trust. The food industry, in particular, faced an uphill battle as fear gripped the hearts of consumers, making them acutely aware of the potential dangers lurking within the products they purchased. In the wake of the monster's attacks, Japan's public safety protocols evolved to address the growing concerns surrounding corporate terrorism. Authorities began to implement rigorous safety measures in food production and distribution, with increased inspections and surveillance mechanisms designed to catch any potential threats. The haunting legacy of the monster extended beyond individual companies. It permeated society, embedding itself into the national dialogue surrounding crime and safety. The monster with 21 faces also left an undeniable imprint on the media landscape. The sensational nature of the poisonings and the ensuing investigation captivated the public's imagination. News outlets seized on the story, weaving a narrative that both fascinated and terrified the populace. The coverage was relentless, feeding the growing public interest and fear surrounding the group. This obsession with the monster continues to resonate in contemporary Japanese culture, where it remains a chilling topic of discussion and speculation. The media's portrayal of the events surrounding the monster contributed to the societal perception of crime as not just an isolated incident, but a pervasive threat that could strike at any moment. The pervasive fear of corporate terrorism has echoed through Japanese society in the years since the monster's reign. The attack served as a catalyst for discussions about trust, safety, and the vulnerabilities of modern corporate culture. The notion that anyone, at any time, could be a potential threat has fostered a climate of suspicion. Public trust has eroded, leading individuals to question the motives of corporations and the efficacy of regulatory bodies designed to protect them. This atmosphere of distrust extends beyond the realm of food safety, embedding itself into broader societal interactions. As the investigation continues to stagnate, the unresolved nature of the monster's crimes looms large. Each passing year is a stark reminder of the failure to bring the perpetrators to justice, and the unsolved mysteries continue to haunt both law enforcement and the public. The chilling reality that a group capable of inflicting such terror could remain hidden in plain sight adds a layer of unease to daily life. The monster has become a modern urban legend, a cautionary tale that underscores the fragility of safety in an increasingly complex world. In concluding this exploration of the monster with 21 faces, it is essential to reflect on how this shadowy figure has shaped public consciousness and the ongoing fear of corporate terrorism. The monster transcended the boundaries of criminality, becoming a symbol of anxiety that resonates through the halls of corporate offices and the hearts of consumers alike. The events of the 1980s and 1990s forced society to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, vulnerability, and the specter of violence lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. Ultimately, the monster with 21 faces remains a haunting reminder of the darkness that can infiltrate even the most secure environments. The fear it has instilled within society serves as a chilling testament to the fragility of safety in a world rife with uncertainty. As Japan continues to grapple with its legacy, the monster will undoubtedly remain a source of fascination and dread, an unresolved chapter in the annals of true crime that continues to haunt the collective consciousness. The fear of corporate terrorism lingers on, casting a long shadow over the future and reminding us all that sometimes monsters do exist, hidden in plain sight, waiting to strike when least expected.